Hello everyone out there. This is a special video that I wanted to do for National City and National City Public Libraries. This is special because I grew up in National City. I was born on Potomac. My parents met at Sweetwater High School. So National City means a lot to me. I actually have a book called Mexican White Boy, and it's set in National City. So I know many people are out there struggling, and I just wanted to maybe read a story to your children. So I'm going to read this book. It's called Last Stop on Market Street. And I'm going to stop the book a couple times to tell you special things about it. But when I was a kid, we would take the bus all the time. So the bus was just part of life. And I went on to college eventually. I moved to New York City, but guess what? I just moved back to San Diego, and I'm so happy to be back on the West Coast, near the Pacific Ocean. And even though these are stressful times, I'm happy to be here during them, as opposed to in New York. So all right, I'm going to read this book to you. It's called Last Stop on Market Street. One of the things you get to do when you write a book is you get to dedicate it to someone. And this book is dedicated to my daughter, Luna, she's a 6-year-old. She just finished kindergarten, so she's young. And here we go. CJ pushed through the church doors, skipped down the steps. The outside air smelled like freedom, but it also smelled like rain, which freckled CJ's shirt and dripped down his nose. He ducked under his Nana's umbrella, saying, "How come we gotta wait for the bus in all this wet?" "Trees get thirsty too," his Nana told him. "Don't you see that big one drinking through a straw?" CJ looked for a long time, but never saw a straw. And what I always tell young people is if you can see the straw that this tree is drinking from, you understand the entire book. I'll come back to that page a little bit later. From the bus stop, he watched water pool on flower petals, watched rain patter against the windshield of a nearby car. His friend Colby climbed in, gave CJ a wave, and drove off with his dad. "Nana, how come we don't got a car?" This is an important page because you know that CJ is starting to notice what other people have that he doesn't. So here's his friend getting in a car. Maybe that's an easier way to get home, he thinks. And he's starting to ask, well, why don't we have that? But his grandmother always has an interesting response. "Boy, what do we need a car for? We got a bus that breathes fire, and old Mr. Dennis, who always has a trick for you." The bus creaked to a stop in front of them. It sighed and sagged, and the door swung open. And the reason the grandmother says we got a bus that breathes fire, obviously, is because on the side of this bus, there's a fire-breathing dragon. When I wrote the book, I put in a little note for the illustrator, who is Christian Robinson, and I said, maybe there's a fire-breathing dragon on the side of the bus. And the reason that dragon is there is maybe it's a movie poster for a movie that's coming out that has a dragon. "What's that I see?" Mr. Dennis asked. He pulled a coin from behind CJ's ear, placed it in his palm. Nana laughed her deep laugh and pushed CJ along. They sat right up front. The man across the way was tuning a guitar. An old woman with curlers had butterflies in a jar. Nana gave everyone a great big smile and a good afternoon. She made sure CJ did the same. Now this is kind of an interesting moment because you get on the bus and you can sit anywhere you want, right? Well, for the grandmother, Nana, it's very important that she shows her grandson that they could sit anywhere on the bus. So they choose the front of the bus. Because there was a time in our country's history when CJ and his grandmother would have had to have sat in the back of the bus. But that's not true anymore. So she's taking advantage of that and saying, hey, you can sit anywhere, CJ. So that's kind of an important moment. But I also think it's kind of important that she's the kind of grandmother who makes sure that her grandson is respectful to other people. So he's always taught to be kind and to acknowledge other people and to say hello. The bus lurched forward and stopped, lurched forward and stopped. Nana hummed as she knit. How come we always gotta go here after church, CJ said. Miguel and Colby never have to go nowhere. I feel sorry for those boys, she told him. They'll never get a chance to meet Bobo or the Sunglass Man. And I hear Trixie got herself a brand new hat. CJ stared out the window, feeling sorry for himself. He watched cars zip by on either side, watched a group of boys hop curbs on bikes. A man climbed aboard with a spotted dog. CJ gave up his seat. How come that man can't see? Boy, what do you know about seeing? His Nana told him. Some people watch the world with their ears. That's a fact. Their noses too, the man said, sniffing at the air. It's a mighty fine perfume you're wearing today, ma'am. Nana squeezed the man's hand and laughed her deep laugh. Here's an interesting thing. Sometimes when I get to this part, some kids will say, well, that doesn't make sense. How could you watch the world with your ears? Because don't you watch the world with your eyes? But I think the point here is that the grandmother's trying to teach CJ that you can watch the world in many different ways. You can watch the world with all of your senses. And here's a man who's lost the ability to see, but he hasn't lost the ability to see. Does that make sense? He just sees in different ways now. He sees through what he hears. I bet some of you, if you close your eyes in your home or apartment, you can imagine where everyone is based on sounds, know who's walking into what room, who's going up the stairs and when. So you can imagine it because you know it so well. You don't even have to see it. Well, the grandmother is trying to teach CJ that there are multiple ways of seeing the world. Two older boys got on next. CJ watched as they moved on by and stood in back. Sure wish I had one of those, CJ said. And if you can't tell, let me get it closer. You see these two boys, they're listening to headphones, probably off of an iPhone. And CJ kind of wishes he had something like that. Nana set down her knitting. What for? You got the real live thing sitting across from you. Why don't you ask the man if he'll play us a song? CJ didn't have to. The guitar player was already plucking strings and beginning to sing. To feel the magic of music, the blind man whispered, I like to close my eyes. Nana closed hers too. So did CJ and the spotted dog. And in the darkness, the rhythm lifted CJ out of the bus, out of the busy city. He saw sunset colors swirling over crashing waves, saw a family of hawks slicing through the sky, saw the old woman's butterflies dancing free in the light of the moon. CJ's chest grew full, and he was lost in the sound, and the sound gave him the feeling of magic. I should tell you one quick thing. These hawks are actually very important because when I was a young boy, I had a very quiet father, He was first generation in America. Both of his parents, my grandparents, they were born in Mexico. And he was a very quiet man. But every once in a while we'd be walking to the park, me and my two sisters with my dad. And if he ever saw a bird or a hawk in the sky, he would stop us and point. And we would all just stand there looking at this hawk in the sky, watching it circle around looking for prey. And cars would be zipping by us all the whole time we were standing there. And I used to think, why is my family so weird? Why are we just standing here? But what I realized when I was older is my dad didn't have the language to tell me what he wanted to say, which was, hey, stop where you are. Look at the world. It's beautiful. So he was noticing the world, and he just showed us what he saw instead of telling us about it. The song ended, and CJ opened his eyes. Everyone on the bus clapped, even the boys in back. Nana glanced at the coin in CJ's palm. And do you remember where he got the coin from? From the bus driver, right? And now he's going to drop it in the man's hat. Last stop on Market Street, Mr. Dennis called. So if this is the title of the book, Last Stop on Market Street, this must be important, so let's figure out why. CJ looked around as he stepped off the bus. Crumbling sidewalks and broken down doors, graffiti-tagged windows and boarded-up stores. He reached for his Nana's hand. How come it's always so dirty over here? She smiled and pointed to the sky. Sometimes when you're surrounded by dirt, CJ, you're a better witness for what's beautiful. So she's pointing up, right? I don't know if anybody can guess what she might be pointing up at that might be beautiful and is in the sky. Do you have a guess? Well, if you guessed rainbow, you're right. There's the rainbow. CJ saw the perfect rainbow arcing over their soup kitchen. He wondered how his Nana always found beautiful where he never even thought to look. And now CJ's trying to think, like, what would it be like if I tried to see the world like my grandmother? So now he's going to try. So he looked all around them again, at the bus rounding the corner out of sight, and the broken street lamps still lit up bright, and the stray cat shadows moving across the wall. When he spotted their familiar faces in the window, he said, I'm glad we came. He thought his Nana might laugh her deep laugh, but she didn't. She patted him on the head and told him, Me too, CJ. Now come on. So obviously CJ didn't want to go to their soup kitchen. And if you don't know what a soup kitchen is, it's a place where people can go to get food if they can't afford to buy their own food. So it's a place where you can get something to eat even if you don't have money. Sometimes it'll be a single person who goes there. Sometimes it will be a whole family. It's called different things, by the way. Sometimes it's a soup kitchen or a food pantry, but they're in most cities. So CJ didn't want to go to the soup kitchen when it was an abstract idea, but when he sees his friends, the people he sees every Sunday, he's happy that he's there. And there's one last thing I want to share with you after I read this text. He thought his Nana might laugh her deep laugh, but she didn't. She patted him on the head and told him, Me too, CJ. Now come on. So this is a part I already read, so I wanted to highlight that again, though, because when I was a kid, my mom used to say, we don't have money we can give to people who are struggling, but we do have one thing we could give to them, and that's our time. So we would volunteer. And I don't know if you notice where CJ and his grandmother are, but they're not at the soup kitchen to eat. They're there to serve. So there they are. They're giving out food to others. So the grandmother's trying to teach CJ, hey, it's important to help other people. And that's the end. Oh, I did mention something about the tree, though, right? So we should go back to that before I say goodbye. Let's find that picture. Oh, here we go. All right, so back to this picture. Do you see the straw that the tree is drinking from? Sometimes people will say, oh, it's the branches. You see these branches right here. That's the straw. Some people say, oh, it's the reflection in the water. That must be the straw because it's in the water. Some people say, oh, it's the roots. And I always tell people, it is one of those. And then we take a vote, and it's usually very split what people think is the straw. And then I have to give them the disappointing news that they're all right. And so whatever you chose as where the straw is, you are correct. And here's what I mean. This whole book is about the fact that you have a choice the way you see the world. If you want to see the beautiful parts of your neighborhood, you're right. They're there. On the flip side, if you want to choose to see the ugly parts of your neighborhood, you are also right, because they're there too, no matter where you live. So what will your choice be? What will you choose to see in the world? And that's sort of the main point of Last Stop on Market Street. So my name is Matt de la Peña. It's been a pleasure reading this book to you. Stay safe and stay together. Okay? Bye, guys.